The big difference between poetry and theater or film is that there's no plot. There doesn't have to be a plot. Nobody has to further a plot along, which is great, as far as I'm concerned.
Hi, Beth.
Hi, Mario.
Hello, Beth. Thank you very much for saying yes to the invitation, and welcome to Poetry.LA. I have your book here, Speaking Parts, and
Yes.
this is the winner of the 2018 Brick Road Poetry Prize. It has 3 sections. One of the sections is subtext, the other one is repertoire, the other one is soliloquy. And in the book, there are many references to cinema, many references to theater. And this, of course, makes sense because you are a poet, but you are also an actress. You are from a family of actors. So this is my first question with you as an actress. From your actress toolbox, what worked and what didn't work to write these poems?
There is a quality of attention, alertness to the world, to things around you, that when you're working on a play as an actor or a film or television show, you are alive to things that kind of magnetize themselves to parts within whatever part you're playing, to within the role. It's a kind of amazing thing, actually, the mystery of it, how it is that suddenly everything becomes electric around you and you go, oh, I can use that. You know, I remember playing a character that had to burst into tears, sobbing. And I was walking along the street and I saw a woman who burst into tears, but she was laughing to keep from crying. And I thought, oh, that's so true. That's so true. I'm going to use that. So for a poet, and I kind of feel like it's the same gig, there's a kind of attention that I'm paying to the world around me. In fact, it gives me license to be distracted all the time, to be paying attention to things, to listen to, overhear conversations, to read things and have it flip on a switch in my brain, and I write it down. Always have paper and a pen. I used to do it on my phone, but I was doing it one time when I was walking and I just kept writing and I tripped and I fell and I broke a rib. So it's better to have paper, to stop and have paper and write it down. So those qualities of attention and alertness and presentness, just very important in the theater. You're essentially completely present in the moment in a way that you actually maybe are never in life. And part of the kind of passion that I have for theater is that it allows you to be present for 2 hours at a stretch. You know, you're on the hook for 2-hour life, and you can't think about your own life. You can't, you're all the whole 2 hours, you're inside of this play that you're repeating as if it's the first time.
There was something that didn't work, any of the skills that don't apply, or you think it comes from the same source?
The big difference between poetry and theater or film is that there's no plot. There doesn't have to be a plot. Nobody has to further a plot along, which is great, as far as I'm concerned, because there's so much exposition that's, required in a play or a film. And you can essentially drop a reader into anything and then time travel, make them go somewhere else, and then braid those two. I mean, the what poetry allows you to do, you can't do. Although, I won't say you can't. I think, in my estimation, the best playwrights are poets, started as poets. Lorca, and currently there's someone named Sarah Rule, who is a well-known poet who's now a well-known playwright. And there's so many, and Beckett, Samuel Beckett, there's so many examples of poets who become theater artists. And I think Lorca even felt that that theater was poetry.
Let's go back to speaking parts for a moment. And why don't you read one of the poems? It's from the first section, subtext. And the poem, I think the poem is called Beside Myself With.
Let me tell the audience that subtext is it runs on a parallel track underneath text. It's kind of felt subliminally by an audience when they hear a line. A line like, I'm so happy can sound so mournful if there's subtext underneath that's sad. So I want to read, just before I read this poem, the epigraph for the section subtext, and it's from Dorothea Lange, the photographer. The work is the process of getting lost. Sometimes you annihilate yourself. And this is Beside Myself With. I'd killed off 2, maybe 3 of myself, stuffed them in the broom closet. Why not the crawl space, I wonder? Closets are the first places they look. What it felt like to kill, I don't remember, except in the bathroom with the cracked skylight, the roaches when I turned on the lamp to pee, the ants on the 1 cup I didn't rinse before bed. Only merely slightly against live and let live, slightly Buddhist fraud. On the lamb, I'm invisible in mirrored Ray-Bans, when the noir version, where even the camera wields a scalpel, framed for something you didn't do, lights up my smartphone like a conscience, see? Run into the actress playing me, try to avoid her, end up complimenting extravagantly. She's so self-possessed, knows about murders, her unruffled hippie chic, and underneath the floaty ruse, harsh as shit kicker boots. She's much better at this scene. More than one of me thinks, honey, you can have the part. Hole up in Manhattan, try to blend in. Which who lives in this cold water flat? Up a steep and very sordid staircase, interior decorated in paisley squalor. Didn't Dee Dee turn me on to this hideout? I play shell-shocked, as happens in times like these, when words don't spit it out, work. Plus, I've never been good with faces. When I was who, what did I didn't do? I must belong here. Don't I keep coming back? I do. I do. Fuck. I do. Eventually, one feels assaulted by disguise.
Was theater your first passion? Were you first an actress and then you became a poet? Or were you always writing? There was a moment of, I don't know if we can call it transition, but there was a moment when you started writing more.
No, I'm kind of promiscuous that way because I actually started out as a child of actors. And not just my parents were actors, but my grandmother was an actress and my aunts and my great-grandparents, and it goes all the way back 6 generations. So the house was full of drama, constant drama. Everything was a 3-act play, which was entertaining, but wasn't, I daren't compete. So I was a painter. I was the person in the corner watching everything, riveted, watching everything, paying attention, drawing in my own world. And I actually went to college on a full art scholarship.
As a painter?
Yeah, as a painter.
And then after that became theater?
I was there in a full boat scholarship at the University of Iowa, the home of the Writers' Workshop. And I was in a sculpture class, and I could not get what was in my head to come out my hands. And I was totally frustrated. And I washed my hands of plaster of Paris, and I walked through the basement of the theater building, and there was a little index card on the wall that said auditions this afternoon, La Ronde. And I said, I'm going to do that. I had always acted. I had also always written. I was editor of my high school paper all 3 years, and I had written short stories. But this moment, I auditioned and I stood on the stage, and I said, and I felt at home, but I also said, oh shit, this is what I have to do. I have to make myself the instrument. It can't be out here. It's me. And I knew just how hard that was going to be. And it was, it was basically abandoning. And I lost my scholarship. My parents were like, what has gotten into you? But, they understood later on, eventually. And I, frankly, it was a great epiphany for me, and it allowed me to develop what was essentially a stunted emotional life. The theater gave me a channel for the passion that I felt, but that was at that point just causing stomach aches. So I went into it with great gusto and made mistakes, and rapidly just tried to learn, kept putting myself in a position of learning and learning and learning, which really has never stopped. And in a way, the very same thing happened to me. I'm sorry, this is such a story, but the very same thing happened to me with poetry. I was increasingly being the mouthpiece for inartful language. This is part of, what happens when you're doing television, essentially. I mean, and as I said earlier, I was often the person that was the exposition, oh, that phone must be from, the criminal, and here's the record, and, just stuff like that. And it started to just be really depressing to me to have been confined to doing that, partly because I was getting older, but also because I had so much more in me to offer. I was really underutilized. And I got sick of having the conversation of, why aren't there better things for me to say? Because I was surrounded by artful language in my household. My parents were constantly leaping into Carl Sandburg poems and Shakespeare monologues. And so the music of that language and the music that I was hearing and the poems that I was reading were so much more eloquent. And the compression, I was really drawn to the idea of compressing it and having it have an extra shebang. So I, again, said, I'm going to do the hardest thing I can do. I'm going to walk into a poetry class knowing nothing.
Who was teaching the class?
It was Laurel Ann Bogan's class at UCLA in the writers program at the extension. And I walked in and I was surrounded by, 20-year-olds. And actually one other student was Barbara Blatt.
Oh, Barbara, yes.
Yeah. And I was, and I basically, and no one knew who I was, and I didn't volunteer that I came from anything. They just thought I was, just a middle-aged woman, trying her hand at something. And I was a serious student and still am. I hope I live long enough to learn what I think I should know.
I think in one of the pieces that I read in the press release of your book, you talk about your admiration for listening, like
Yes.
something you admire, which is also a very good attribute to great actors, the ability to listen to the other actors. I would like you to read a poem. I think it's in the second section. It's about your mother. It's called World Gift Convention.
Yes. This is my mother. Yeah. My parents both died 3 weeks apart. And in the course of writing this book. And so they entered the book. And my mother actually has the biggest speaking part in Speaking Parts. World Gift Convention. In their artificial roses, Mom was a big seller in the top tier. She filled our fridge with chilled velvet bouquets. Cold makes them curlier. For the July convention, she sewed a carnation pink suit to wear. It was her first creation, not a baby, made of wash and wear wonder fabric. Dacron, double knit, the latest thing. She sewed for days, zigzag stitched through her pinky, put her hand in her hair to keep blood off the jacket. People think redheads can't wear pink, but you have to just choose the right pink. At the Dallas convention, among peers, she would know glory. The welcome home marigolds we picked, she placed on top of her gloves, top of her handmade suit, laid where, shut up in Dad's trunk. It festered all through summer, burnt the skirt orange. Why can't I ever have nice things? Red-eyed, she banished her very easy, very vogue suit to the rag pile when mercifully that November, the rage for that particular shade of pink abruptly died.
At the end of your book, there is almost like a full page of names. I call it like a page of gratitude. There is, you mentioned many poets, and one of them, David St. John, says, and she says it's talking about your book and the amount of characters in the book and how you give the floor, or you give a stage to them. He says, to speak for others so allows us to speak for those many interior aspects of ourselves. It's a great line. What did you learn about yourself in the process of writing speaking parts?
One thing is I'm a born poet. I think I've been a poet all my life, and I only just got the guts to try to do it. In my third act. And I could be like Eugene O'Neill and have 4 acts, so don't think I'm done yet. But I the habits of being a poet, the passion that I have for it, I was besotted with it, and I just hoped with all my heart that I wouldn't tire, that I wouldn't want to move on to another boyfriend. And I'm still besotted with it. I'm in love with it even more, if that's possible.
I have asked this question to other poets that are painters or photographers about the how exposed they feel. Mm-hmm. And being an actor is the most. It looks like the most exposed thing because it's your own body, it's your own voice. But do you feel you need more courage to be a poet?
I think all artists have to be courageous. I think in order to dare to find the hard things to say, like Lorca says, all that has darkness has duende. I think you have to really challenge yourself to write the hard things.
This poem that you were talking about is the one that you have selected to read at the end of the interview, or is the one that we have selected part of a lifetime?
It's part of a lifetime. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then great timing.
Yeah. So you want me to read that?
Yeah. Let's go ahead with.
This is in section 3, which is called. What's it called again?
Soliloquy.
Soliloquy. Is on stage, it's basically a secret that a character is telling you and only you in the audience. So it's like, I'm telling you this, but don't tell anyone else, even though everybody is listening to it. Like their inner thoughts. The most famous soliloquy, of course, is to be or not to be. That is the question. And the little prelude to reading this is that I wrote this poem about my mother. She was hospitalized. And she had something, they never really quite figured out what it was she had. It could have been a chemical imbalance. It could have been a stroke, but she didn't remember it. And when I wrote this poem, I didn't want to hurt her, because I think it's a wonderful poem. It's an homage to her, but I didn't want her to be upset, to be reminded. But one day I went into her room. This is really in her waning months. And I said, Mom, I want to read this poem to you. It's about you. And I'll read it, and then I'll tell you what she said after it. Part of a lifetime. Mom needs potassium. Bananas, I say. And then her line, it's true. And there we are again in a vaudeville routine. She smells like a perfume that's gone off, and her timing's shot. I did a heart attack on Seventh Heaven. You want to see? Take it easy, drawls the intake nurse. In the morning, she phones Dad on her hospital orange juice can. Honey, good news. Overnight, I learned Japanese. Dr. Snows describes dilantin, stat, the tall world flat. That's what Mom needs. By the matinee, she's down to 2 words. Another coincidence. The next day, she's a silent movie. On the 3rd day of her hospital engagement, like champagne uncorked, Mom talks for 14 hours, no intermission, speaking on the inhale to hold the floor, her clattering hands. I've always wanted to be ambivalent, she crows, careening in grand loop-de-loops of tirade. She is lucky, waiting for Godot, qua, 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 and all day, as the meal trays pile up and the sun changes shifts with the moon, I watch her scale this huge monologue, the biggest part she's ever had, persevering, even after she's lost her audience, all save me, her standby, I know, waiting to go on for her.
What did she say at the end?
Yes, I read this poem to her and I said, so Mom, this is what happened to you. And she said, thank you. I had no idea what happened to me. Thank you. And I said, Mom, you might be surprised at how much of a muse you are for me and how much I write about you. I said, this could be your shot at immortality if anyone reads it. And she said, oh, they will.
Wonderful. When you were talking about the last section of the book, Soliloquy, and you explained that it's like a secret the actor communicates to the audience, I think it always happens to me as a reader when I read a masterful poet, it always feels like he or she is talking to me alone. Like it's like a little confession. Like I know it's not true, the poem can be read by anybody, but that's the feeling I get. It's kind of intimacy, almost secrecy. Yeah, it is. It's a very peculiar.
I think there is a desire to be intimate with people, that you, as a poet, as an actor, as any kind of artist, you are intimate with your subject matter. You are intimate to the point of sharing that intimacy with someone else. It's so heart-filling. It's quite wonderful that way.
I believe you have selected a poem to close the interview. So
I have.
Okay, wonderful.
I want to just give the preface to this, which is that I used to watch science fiction movies with my dad, who had this just kook. My dad was also an actor, and he would always say, honey, it's not real, it's not real. But he just loved to be scared. He loved to watch them, and he'd say, do you know how long it took him to set up that shot? Stuff like that, just to try to throw me off. And I know that Gail Ronsky said that in science fiction, these great things are at stake. So so I'm going to read this poem, and you'll see a science fiction movie shows up in the middle of it.
Okay.
Surprise. I hate to ruin the surprise, but it's called Opening Day at You Pick Cherries in the Leona Valley. To get there, We cross a landscape that shuns green, the same rain shadow Mojave that the death or glory sons and daughters once trudged, hallucinating, with the rumor of ocean more preposterous than oranges in groves. These days, it's meth country. The mayor's busy paving sidewalks into undulating curves, piping birdsong through speakers, heralding a gentler downtown. Corrals of Bunyan-esque fiberglass roosters and cows butt up against the road. Remember Them? One of us says. Sci-fi movie, 1954. Desert atom bomb tests spawn giant irradiated ants. Mad, ruthless insects. Stand-ins for commies. Kill one, two more take its place. Black and white, film stock, naturally. For they say you have taken the sunshine. Leon sings, and his voice rides us over to where there's grass. Now we're under the spell of the song that aches like a phantom limb. We pick $36 worth of deep purple-red Brooks cherries, admonished not to eat them in the orchards before we pay up. We gorge on them in the car, staining our fingers, lips. We are the beasts.
Thank you very much, Beth. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Mariano.